welcome to Suzanne's studio. I'm Suzanne Barnett, your host. I am so excited tonight to introduce my guest. Her name is Bonnie Stearns, and Bonnie is an extraordinary person, not just in quilting, but in many things. And I just wish we had enough time so I could tell you her medical background, one of which Bonnie was a nurse practitioner. She's a baker, and she is a gardener. But tonight we're going to talk about the fact that Bonnie Stearns is the founder and leader of Silicon Valley Quilts for Kids. Bonnie, I am so happy to be interviewing you. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure. I'm glad to be here, Suzanne.
And you're such a fun person, and you're now a neighbor of mine, and I really, I hate to say this, but I had a hard time getting you here, and you're so fabulous and, and important. Okay, let's talk about how did you become a quilter?
I became a quilter because one of my very best friends has quilted since the 1960s or 70s, and she seemed to be having a good time with it. I enjoyed sewing, so she went with me to a beginning quilting class back in 1995 or 6. So I've kept it up ever since then.
So tell us about your organization.
Silicon Valley Quilts for Kids is one of about 80-plus chapters of Quilts for Kids Incorporated. We are a 501c3 IRS-determined nonprofit organization. That means people who donate to us can write that off as a tax deduction. So around the country, these women I should say women, I think there may be a couple men, but I've never seen a photograph or a reference to a man doing this. We make and donate quilts to kids who are either seriously ill or injured or, having been traumatized, live in a circumstance that is not of their choosing. So in our case, we donate to 10 or more agencies around Santa Clara County, one in San Leandro. We've sent quilts to the fire victims in Lake County last fall. Recently, we've made contact with the Law Enforcement Wives Organization, and when a law enforcement officer is killed in their duty, then their children are offered quilts from us too. So we visit hospitals and shelters primarily, also hospices.
Now, tell me, why are these quilts so important to these children?
Well, all the kids who receive a quilt from us are in a situation where they have no control over where they are, really. We donate to the oncology patients at Stanford's Children's Hospital, the Lucille Packard Hospital. A lot of kids are in a shelter where they've been pulled from their homes suddenly, and they leave without their clothes, their backpack, their homework. They have nothing but what they were wearing when their mother said, "This is it, we're leaving right now." And so when they arrive at one of these shelters and someone gives them or allows them to choose from a selection of these colorful quilts, that's something that's theirs alone. They get to keep it. It's a personal gift. And the name of the person who made it for them is written on the back. So they know that it might say, made for you by Bonnie, or by Suzanne, or by Nancy, Jan, whoever the quilter's name is. And they feel like they have a contact with somebody they will never meet who cares about them. So,
well, you've got a couple of very, very heartwarming stories. Would you tell us, please?
I'll tell you about two girls that we found out lived in Lake County when those huge fires swept through their neighborhood in Hidden Valley, I think it's called, north of San Francisco, about 8 months ago. And these girls were daughters of firefighter, and then lost their own home while their father was out fighting fires in some other neighborhood. And these are two girls for whom we're very fortunate. We have a photograph of these girls. We rarely get any kind of image of the kids who receive quilts from us. There are so many privacy concerns. But these girls' mothers signed a release so that we can show their picture. And so we have a picture of them dancing outdoors, holding the quilts that they chose. So that was rewarding for us to see where these quilts go, and I think it was fun for them too.
Don't you have a Betty Boop story?
Betty Boop story, I do. There was an email I got from the child life specialist. This is an occupational specialty in children's hospitals where this person is sort of the ombudsman or the liaison between the families and the hospital, try to make the child's stay in the hospital a little more tolerable and even fun. And she contacted me and asked if we had any quilt with Betty Boop on it. And I said we didn't, but I had just seen some Betty Boop fabric advertised at a local quilt shop. So I said we can get that fabric and we could work on this quilt right away. And we did that. I mean, that day I had the fabric in my hands and I started working on it that evening. And I also said, is there any hurry here? Because this is the woman who works in the oncology department. These children have cancer. She said, no, this is not an urgent thing. So we started to make the quilt. A few days later, she contacted me again and she said, it's more urgent than I thought. So we really went into high gear on that, and I phoned around to some of our quilters, one of whom had a quilting machine that can stitch very elaborate patterns on the quilts, and asked her, if I finish this quilt, can you quilt it right away? She said, I can do it overnight. And she did. Within 48 hours, we had that quilt at Stanford for that girl. And the family found that to be terrific, and I found out later, a couple weeks later, when I was at Stanford, and I said, how's Betty Boop doing? And the child life specialist, Michelle, said nothing. She just shook her head. And I knew that girl didn't make it. But I found out that she had that quilt on her bed when she died. So you never know where these quilts are going to go. You don't know if this child is going to be laughing all the way, or you don't know if it's going to be maybe the last day of that child's life that they hold on to that quilt. So everything we turn out is made with love, and we try to do a good job for kids we'll never meet.
Why do you enjoy it so much, Bonnie?
I like the geometry of it.
Yeah.
I like putting the pieces together. I like the color. I love knowing that someone's going to get a surprise they never expected. I like the idea of kids getting a surprise. And so all that wraps up together and lets me know when I'm working on one of these quilts that it's going to go to a good place.
Well, I've heard a couple of quilters say, well, I'm not artistic, but I like to sew. And I totally disagree with that, because every one of these quilts looks to me like a painting. Mm-hmm. So the quilter has to have some or a lot of artistic ability to be able to put these together. I don't mean just the sewing, mm-hmm. but how do you...
The patterns, the colors, everything.
How do you do that?
It's a spectrum. Some are very simple. There are lots of squares sewn together, but the colors make it stand out. And other people in our group will make a quilt that's a real work of art. It's a mosaic. It's something unique. But we have people from the beginner to the professional quilter. All of those people are in our group. And half of the fun is putting things together that will make a pleasing presentation. So,
and how did these quilters find out about your organization?
We keep flyers or a business card in quilt shops in the area. We have a presence on our national headquarters website where every chapter is listed by state. We have our own website. I'm happy to say that in Silicon Valley, we have a website, and I think we're the only Quilts for Kids chapter that has a website, not just a Facebook page, but a website. So people can go to siliconvalleyqfk.org, and they'll find us that way. Sometimes people just happen in the quilt shops while we're there working, and that can be a pretty active group, and they'll wonder what is going on back there, and they'll find out that way, and maybe people have joined us.
Not only that, but two things I remember: no dues and no business meetings.
That's right.
So it's very social too, isn't it?
It's a social opportunity for quilters to get together.
Yeah.
I think it's therapeutic for some people just to have a place, a respite spot where they know they're going to be among friends, and they don't have to deal with their children or their spouse or their job or their bank. They can just sit down and direct their attention to doing something that they find pleasant.
But we're going to talk about something else that's so important, and that's that you have run out of room. What are you going to do about that, Bonnie?
I think what you're referring to is not in my home, but for the organization.
Yeah.
You're right. We started with 8 people in 2011, and we've grown to over 70 quilters. It's just exploded. And so far, we are so thankful for the 2 quilt shops, the Granary in Sunnyvale and Eddie's Quilting Bee, also in Sunnyvale. They have given us, each of them, 4 hours of time in their classroom where we hold our workshops. So twice a month we meet, rocking back and forth from one shop to the other. But those quilt shops aren't getting larger, but we are. And so we are really looking for a place where we can stretch out a little bit, where more of our members can hook up their sewing machine and sew at the workshop rather than just come to drop things off and leave. So yes, we are actively looking for another roomier place where we can meet.
Do you have some parameter, some idea of what if someone's watching this show and they're going to call
Yep.
KMVT. Okay. So where would you like to, I mean, if you could envision wherever you would like to go,
it would be a well-lit workspace with tables and chairs, access to some electrical outlets, and I know some people have been afraid that we'd put a drain on how much power we would draw, but in fact, we don't use any more power than a laptop computer. So if a group of people gather in a meeting space and they're all plugged in, they're actually using more power than we would for the same number of people and equipment. So it would have to be well lit, tables and chairs, be able to accommodate, I'd say, 25 or 30 people, maybe half of whom would be sewing, would bring their own portable sewing machine and set up shop for that 3 or 4 hours.
Is that going to be a possibility? I'm kind of worried about that.
Are you kind of worried about it?
I am.
I am hopeful this will pop up. We've entertained 3 different places right now, and I'm continuing conversations with them, hoping to find what will work for us.
Yeah. But you know, as I found out about you and about all of your talents, you're a Renaissance woman. You are, Bonnie. I don't know what you cannot do. But anyway, you wanted to teach me to bake. That didn't work. Now you want me to become a quilter, and I can't even sew a button on correctly. I could never do that, ever.
You could be a color advisor.
Oh, but the other thing is that it's like you have to really be a bit of a mathematician, don't you? Tell about that.
It does. Well, if you want to make a tidy quilt, it starts with measuring right and cutting correctly and even using the iron the right way. And things will go together the way you envision them in a pattern. But there are also art quilters who don't have a pattern in mind, and they're sort of building one layer of fabric on another.
Yeah.
We don't do a lot of that because there's often embellishment in quilts like that, and that's the kind of thing that would get tangled up in the quilting equipment. But we do a lot of geometric work, or just, I don't know if some of these are showing up on your camera. This quilt right here is abstract. That one up there, very geometric and ordered. There's a whole...
But it must be such a thrill to do one of these and show it. And I had no idea there were so many sick children. Tell about that.
Well, I believe at any given moment there are 1,600 children in foster care in Santa Clara County. We can't touch that many, but we do pledge, I'd say, 30 quilts a quarter to a group called EMQ. Lacey is another group that's legal advocates for children and youth. We donate to them regularly. More than half of our quilts go to hospitals. So there's a limit to how many we can hand out, but we've donated over 2,500 quilts in the couple of years we've been together.
2,500?
2,500, right.
Goodness.
Keeps growing. But there's no shortage of children who are in unhappy situations. So we just keep plugging along and doing it.
I just think I'm very, very touched by this. That's why I wanted to interview you. I really did so badly. And you're so important in this life. You really are, Bonnie.
Well,
what do you envision with the rest of your life? But you're still a young lady.
the rest of my life. I can't see an end to this. I think I'll be doing this as long as I can.
Yeah.
So I've recently moved to a retirement community with my husband, and we are having a good time there. I have family in different parts of the country. I'll go to see them. I have 2 girls who live nearby, and we see them frequently. So I don't see any large assignments for myself on the horizon. I think I'll just keep doing this.
I'm sure you will, but I have a feeling something else will come along.
Do
and
you?
knit, and you've got to tell about one of your, when I first met you and I saw your apartment, I wasn't nearly as interested in the quilting because I didn't really know what it was about, but all of that petty point and all that stuff that you do, and tell about the Monopoly board. I wanted you to bring that, Bonnie.
Oh, my sister and I had a little competition to embroider a Monopoly board. It was from a pattern. There's nothing creative about it. I'm just following the pattern, following the directions. I think it's fun to look at.
But every stitch, it's exactly, and you've used it to play on.
Oh, of course. Yes.
What if it gets dirty?
Well, it's got glass on top. I don't worry about that.
You play on the glass.
There's glass.
Okay.
And it's a scratch-resistant glass, so that when we play with those little metal pieces, it won't be dinged up. But I think it's fun to look at when people just see it. Somebody put a Monopoly board in a frame, and then they realize it's all stitched by hand.
And not only that, but the frame is different. It's not just square.
Oh, that's right. It's strung on the back with a nylon cord with rubber bumpers, so it won't scratch the wall and it won't scratch the table when you set it down on glass.
Yeah, but it's not a completely, as you look at it, it's not a complete rectangle, is it?
Indeed it is. It's just hanging on the diagonal.
That's it.
So it's looking like a diamond.
That's it. That shows my geometry. Could you tell a little bit about your medical background?
My medical background. Okay. I started out as a registered nurse. I became a nurse practitioner about 15 years into that. And then I moved into industry and started working in medical device companies, 4 startups in a row. That probably caused me to retire earlier than otherwise would have happened, because it takes a lot out of you to work in a startup, and to do 4 back-to-back was quite an endeavor. And then I retired as an officer of a medical device company, and I've been retired now for 8 years. Hard to believe.
But you're into, I mean, this is taking up a huge amount of time, isn't it, your quilting?
You know, it comes and goes. Sometimes I'll sit down and I'll sew almost nonstop for 2 days, and other times I have things to do. So I don't sew all the time. But it all comes together, and at each of our workshops, we might turn in 25, 35, 40 quilts every 2 weeks. They come in waves. And so when I'm not quilting too much, the other person might be going full out. And so we gathered more than 800 quilts last year to be donated.
That is just amazing. Yeah. And all these other quilters must feel very much the same way that you do. I mean, you have to be so dedicated, but I mean, the outcome is wonderful, but then you're dealing with these terribly sick children.
That's true. I'm glad we have a social aspect to it, too, because it's a chance for everybody to get together, find out what's going on. It's a little bit of a support group. We have a lot of cancer survivors in our group, and there's really no element of a quilter's life that we don't touch on when we sit down together and sew a couple times a month.
Would you give your email again?
For the group?
Yeah.
It's Silicon Valley QFK at quiltsforkids.org. That's the email address. Or the website is siliconvalleyqfk.org. People can find us either way.
But what if a whole bunch of people see this show? Of course, we've got so many viewers, of course, millions, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
We wish. No, but in case they've missed that, they could always call the studio.
They could call the station.
Yeah, the
and
station.
And I can leave the contact information at the station.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah. Well, I just think I'm so proud to know you, really.
Oh,
I'm
that's
not
sweet.
being effusive, but I'm from my heart. And when I get to know people like you, and then to be able to show the world, because we're going to be on YouTube, along with millions of other people. And you know, I've been doing this show for 25 years, and I feel so lucky and so blessed that if I meet somebody like you, and that what you do is so important, and then to be able to show it, you know, to the world now,
Right.
is just such a blessing to me,
Right.
really.
Well,
So I bet you can't wait to come on again.
I'm ready. I'll have to get some new quilts to display.
I know, and our crew was able to put this together
They did an
in a
excellent
matter
job.
of minutes. We have such a talented crew. Yeah,
Well, I'm thankful for that.
yeah.
That's great.
I just absolutely love being here and being an interviewer,
That's great.
not an interviewee.
And I have to say, your costume looks terrific in comparison to all the color around you.
Oh, thank you.
It's great. I'm a backdrop in
Well,
your...
that's not, of course, because I thought we were going to, you know, hold it up. But would you like to say, you've got a quilt that maybe you could talk
I
about?
have a few up here.
Yeah, let's talk about that for
Look
a
at
moment.
this one. And this ribbon, every quilt that we have, we wrap in a roll like this, and we tie with a ribbon. After, I think the first donation we made was to a shelter in San Jose. And this little boy, as we were leaving, this little boy, he had chosen his quilt already, and he was tugging on my shirt. And I said, what? He said, can you roll mine up and tie it again, because I want to have a present when I go to sleep tonight. So this is not just handing them some piece of bedding. This is a gift for these children. And so they all come wrapped up with a little bow, like that. And this one is Clifford the Big Red Dog. Every child will recognize this character.
Oh, Bonnie. Did you make this one?
Oh, I did not. I did not. And the way the child knows who made it for them is they will find this little label on the back of the quilt that says, Quilts for Kids, do you like your quilt? Tell us your story. My quilt at quilts.kids.org. And then the person who made it can put their name right in that box. So that the child has an invisible friend now.
Of course.
So that's Clifford. This one is a fabric that we all used one year. We call it our challenge fabric, because it was a challenge to make a quilt all out of the same fabric. If you hold one edge up there, this one, do you see the crayons tumbling out of the
look
box
at
here?
that.
Yeah, this was a big favorite. I've kept a couple of these that I can show to groups, say when I go to talk to a Rotary Club or a Kiwanis Club. I need to have a little
these demos make a
demos for show
very
and
big
tell.
difference.
Yeah,
Oh,
so we have to
isn't
keep a
that
couple
fantastic?
back.
I mean, look at the artwork in this. That's what I can't get over.
Right. So this one, this is one of, and the back is even made of crayons too.
It's just fabulous. See, now I could see all of these as like a skirt. You know, I mean, they're just so fantastic.
Well, the kids often use these as, they see themselves as superheroes, and they throw them over their shoulders and run around in their hospital or in their shelter. So they also look at these as clothing.
And not only that, but these are pretty indestructible, aren't they?
Well, they're all machine made. They're machine pieced, they're machine quilted. And we think that will make them sturdier than something that was handmade.
I would think
That's for sure.
Yeah. And they're washable, of course.
Oh, of course, yeah.
You have to wash these before.
They're all washed before they go out.
I see.
Yeah.
So who does that?
Every quilter washes their own.
I see.
So that's sort of the last step before we wrap them, roll them, and tie them in a bow. Then we know they're ready to go out.
Well, Bonnie, I can't thank you enough. Really, I've been so looking forward to interviewing you, because you have so much material. And then this, though, I feel that this is your passion. And if we don't have passion, what do we have, right?
Chocolate.
Chocolate. And your baking, your bread, your pies, your cookies.
Oh, my.
And thank you so much, and I only wish you continued lots and lots of quilts and good health.
Well, thank you. It was fun doing this with you.
Thank you. And I want to thank our crew. I mean, like, they got this set together in a matter of a very short time. I love my crew. I just don't know. We're all volunteers, and we're all different, right? And one time I said to the crew, how come you're so, we've been together for years, and how come we stay together? And they said, because the guests that I have are so hot. Hot being cool.
Being cool.
And so anyway, I want to thank my crew, I want to thank you, and I want to thank my audience for watching. What would I do without all of you wonderful people? And you know what? I can't wait to see you next time. Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye.